Hey guys, thanks for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. If you're a returning listener, it's great to have you back. If you're new to the channel, really glad you joined us. Hope you like what you hear. So today we've got a guest on who's going to talk about his experiences with his family, his experiences as a professional, his experiences with friends. He's got a coaching business. He gained sole custody of his children when he was divorced. Represented himself through the last part of that. Super interesting guy. We think his message is great. We think you're really going to like hearing from him. His name is Mark Aylward, and we'll put links to all of his contact information in the show notes so you can get in touch with him. But I think it's going to be a great conversation. So without any further ado, let's bring Mark on to the show. All right. So Mark, welcome to Salty Ginger Talk. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Joe. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, you and I had a great conversation a couple weeks ago, and I've been looking forward to bringing you onto the channel because I think your message is a great one, and you bring a ton of experience of working with people through a variety of mediums, and I think it'll be great for our audience to hear about your experiences through that. And so yeah, been looking forward to it. With that said, if you wouldn't mind giving folks just a brief background of both personal professional history, and then we can just jump right in with me peppering you with questions and you giving us brilliant insights.
I'll let you guys be the judge of how brilliant they are. Yeah, no, thank you again, Joe. I really appreciate you having me on. Like I said, I really enjoyed our first conversation. I'm a single father of three young adult children, late 20s, early 30s. All of them are also entrepreneurs, and very interesting story of how I became a single parent, but maybe for another time, or you can poke at that later on. Um, so I started my first company, 5 years into my career. I worked for somebody else for about 5 years as a recruiter, and then I started my own staffing company. So I've been in the information technology staffing business for about 30 years. And for the last 5 or 10, I've coached. When I sold my last company, it was kind of in duress. It was a result of a divorce. Didn't want to, but kind of had to. And then I ended up getting custody of my kids as my own attorney, and I'm not an attorney. So that's a pretty interesting story. But I needed mobility. I needed to move around because I was driving three kids to different fields and sports facilities and teacher meetings and doctor's appointments, and that was all my stuff. So I grabbed my laptop and a phone and said, I've helped so many people get to the next level professionally. I think that's a viable coaching service. And what I've discovered is everybody needs some help, because most of us kind of get in our own way. So I've been doing that. And now what I'm trying to do with my business, my coaching business, is move from a exchange of time for money and scale it up. I'm a little concerned about taking myself too far out of the coaching personally, because I think my personal humanity and empathy is part of my magic. And so I'm trying to figure that out without diminishing the quality of the delivery of the service. And it's interesting trying to figure it out, but we'll get there. I'm very optimistic about the future.
Nice. And so one of the things we do on the show, Mark, is I recap themes that we talk about all the time. And it's interesting because we have our guests come from a very eclectic, wide group of people, diverse backgrounds, et cetera, et cetera. But there are common themes that we encounter over and over and over again from people that have made successful things happen in their life. And you touched on a couple of them that I just want to recap for the audiences. So you just heard Mark talk about being a single father, represented himself in a system that is stacked against men. Let's just be real straightforward. When you go to court as a parent, it's much better to be a mother in divorce court than it is to be a father in divorce court. And acted as his own attorney, got custody of his sons. That took action. And we hear from people over and over and over again that taking action is the first step in resolving a lot of your issues. Sometimes you take action and you fuck it up 7 ways a Sunday. Sometimes you take action and you hit it out of the park on the first try. It's usually a lot more the first one than the second one, but people that are successful take action. And you just heard Mark talk about that from a parenting perspective, from a personal perspective, from a professional perspective. So I just like to call those things out real early on, because it's not an accident that we're sitting here talking to Mark about the good stuff he's done in the world, because he's taken action. So I like to call that stuff out for our listeners because I think it gets lost on some people. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people think, you just got, oh, it must be nice to be you. You just got lucky. Fuck, you didn't get lucky at all. There's a lot of work involved in where you
Yeah.
got to. So,
Just one
um,
slight correction, Joe. This you said sons. I have two daughters and one son, so I want to
oh,
make sure I don't offend my daughters by leaving them out of the conversation.
for sure. And I don't want to disenfranchise half the country either by labeling all women men or all men women. I know it's a touchy subject these days. So his three children, let's refer to them as his children because that's
There you go.
always accurate. So, but that's great. Yeah, that's great. We can talk about that some if we get to it, and no big deal if you don't want to talk about it too deeply either. We get that as well. But so let's start with that first decision, at least the first decision I heard as it relates professionally. So you're working at a staffing company and you decided to hang up your own shingle. Talk about what led you to do that and talk about how it went. Some of the things that went well when you first started out and some of the things that might have bit you in the ass when you first started out.
Yeah, I got into recruiting in response to finding out that my girlfriend at the time, my future wife, was pregnant and that we were going to have a family. And so I had to take myself from a relatively confused, lost 25, 26-year-old to a man with the flip of a switch. And it's interesting to say that because I see all the 20 somethings and they're not grown up yet either. So I was kind of in the pack. But anyway, I went looking. I immediately said, okay, this is much bigger than me. I've got a responsibility here. Let's do some adulting. And shortly thereafter, a couple days maybe, I walked into my parents' condo and my mother was there with her best friend who was there with her new husband. She had just gotten remarried, Australian guy. And I was instinctively drawn to him. He was a fascinating guy. And I just said, look, I'm not to pry, but I'm looking to find my future here. And I'm wondering, what do you do for a living? How do you make your money, if you don't mind? Because I normally wouldn't ask somebody that question, especially somebody I didn't know. And he said, I am a recruiter of petrochemical engineers for Saudi Arabian oil companies. And I said, well, can you translate that for me? I have no idea what that means. And he went on to explain the role of a recruiter, particularly as it pertains to large organizations, perhaps global organizations, not necessarily, that don't seek out their own talent. They outsource that to agencies called recruiting agencies, and there are a variety of reasons for that. But when he explained it to me, I said, "Well, how do you make your money?" And he said, "I get a percentage of the starting salary." And I said, well, what's an average starting salary? And he said, well, they give lavish packages to attract people for 3-year contracts. So it's around 300 grand. And I said, what's the percentage of the fee? And he said, 25. And I went out and started responding to ads for recruiting because I thought that sounds pretty good to me. And, and I worked for a company in New Hampshire for about 3 years. And then, it was time to get out of Boston. I was being inundated with people's opinions about what I should do or shouldn't do or how I should raise my family and well-meaning and stuff. But anyway, that put me in touch with a guy. I made some friends aware of that. And one of the young ladies named Joanna, who I recruited with, said, you should talk to my friend Paul. And so I did set up a conversation and he became my mentor. So fast forward, I moved down to Florida to help him start a company. That's what he asked me to do. And he actually gave me a little money and helped me out with the move because I was penniless at the time. And I said, I'm going down for 6 months and I'm going to bring my wife and daughter down. I'm going to go make a life for us. And I did. So I just went down there and started working my ass off. And he told me early on, after I recognized how intelligent he was and how successful he was, I said, I'll give you whatever I got. I'm not going to cross any ethical boundaries, but I'll give you all my effort, all my competence, all my skill, all my energy. Just tell me what to do. Tell me what it means to build a consulting company. And so he did. He financed the whole thing. He gave me a piece of equity in the company, and I did all the work. And he sold that company a few years later. That's when we parted ways pretty amicably, and he didn't want to stick around post-purchase. He was going to take the money and run. So he stroked me a check, and And I took that check and I built a house and started my own company. So poke at that however you'd like. There's a lot of juicy details in there.
I love it. How did the so again, taking action, right? You didn't know where this was going to lead, but you were willing to take your shots and you were
Mhm.
willing to do the work to try to advance yourself, provide for your family. Good stuff there. I like calling that stuff out for listeners. So, action leads you places. You don't always
Mhm.
know the place it's going to lead you, but a lot of them are good if you're willing to take the shots, if you're willing to do the
Mhm.
hard swallow and fight your way through adversity and or unknown circumstances, right? You
Mhm.
didn't plan on being a parent at 25, got surprised by that, and then it's time to kind of join the real world and take things serious. You start having conversations, you wind up where you wind up. So, how did the equity conversation take place? Did you raise that or did he offer that to you?
He offered that, and as I recall, there was supposed to be a renegotiation of that never happened, and I didn't take that personally because it was a pretty significant chunk as it was. But yeah, he recognized in me what he had, and he recognized what I was capable of, and he was a reasonable guy. So I didn't have any benchmark for what an equity conversation was supposed to look like. So I said, sounds good, you know?
Sure. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I've
Well, I
been there.
mean, Joe, he paid me handsomely the whole time. I was a commissioned salaried sales rep, and then I became a sales manager, a recruiting manager, and then I took over the whole company when he sold it. I became the regional VP of the acquiring organization. So I went from 5 million in revenue to 47 million in revenue in a week. And that was an interesting voyage. I discovered very quickly, probably 3 months, I'm not working for somebody else. That's not
Mm.
working for me at all.
What did you not like about it?
See if I could say this without sounding arrogant. I didn't like reporting to people that were stupid, you know? So, it's funny, Joe. I remember one of the first meetings they brought I don't know, it's 10 companies that they had acquired in the southeastern United States, Atlanta, Jacksonville, Tampa, Orlando, Carolinas. And we all were supposed to go up to this whiteboard. Most of these guys were the owners of those companies. I was not the owner of mine, so that was a bit of a difference. But we started describing, tell us what kind of technology that you have. We don't have any technology. We have a phone system. Tell us how many job openings that you attend to at one time. Four. How many do you fill? All four. These guys were throwing out 150 openings. We fill three or four of those every month. I'm like, that's not 150 openings. That's 150 pieces of bullshit.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
So, what I discovered very quickly is the world in which I had learned was massively more efficient than the one I was just sold into. And so that was where the stupidity comment came from. They honestly, they were doing transactional, non-relationship, uninteresting work. And I wanted high value, high touch relationship work. So it was oil and water.
Yeah, that's a great comment. Talk a little bit about the difference between transactional business relationships and long-term collaboration relationships, if you wouldn't mind, because I think it's a super powerful point you just brought up, and I think it's lost on a lot of people. And I've had a ton of success doing what you're talking about. I'd love to hear from you explain to our audience the difference.
Well, I think it suited my personality. I think that I'm a talker. I'm a relationship guy. I'm very intellectually curious. And I discovered early this is a really serious decision for people to be making, what to do next for work. I ranked it up there in the top five. And depending on how you feel about God and family and your house, and it's one of the most important things that you can do. So I never took the position that I was going to just gloss over this and throw you out there to a couple of opportunities that you might like. I discovered everything there was to know about you. And I set expectations that this is how we're going to do things. I can't tell you, Joe, how many times I had people say, "You don't sound like all the other recruiters I talk to." And I
Right.
took that as a compliment. And then I would go to the clients, and the hiring process in this country is absurd. It's horrible, and it always has been. So you go into these companies and they'd all want you to talk to human resources. And I'm like, are they hiring the people? The people are going to work for them? No, I don't want to talk to them. They're not going to do me any favors. They don't probably even know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about software engineering. I don't even know what I'm talking about yet. And so I would just go and I would get, I was taught this way. I was taught not to, I was taught to bypass the any intermediary, any door watching person, any person who is supposed to be policing my behavior and get right to the person that cut the checks, signed the paychecks, cut my check, whatever. Sometimes it was a CFO, sometimes it was a CIO, sometimes it was a director or VP level, but they had to have their own money. They didn't, they couldn't have to go elsewhere to get approval for the money that they needed to spend with me. Otherwise, they didn't qualify in my book. And then I'd start having conversations with these senior level executives, and I found out very quickly off the record, Joe, I'd say, what do you think about the hiring process? Oh my God, let me close my door, Mark. I got that all the time. They don't know what they're doing. I interview people that aren't qualified. I look at resumes that are ridiculous. These positions are open for 6 months. I said, all right, this is what I need from you if you're game, because that sounds like hell. That sounds horrible. And it's perhaps the most important thing a company can do is hire the right people.
By
And
far.
so for the life of me, I don't understand why the process is so broken. But I've got some opinions on that if we have time. But then I would sit down with this IT and I'd say, look, this is the way I get paid on a contingent basis. So until you hire someone from me and they start and they stay here for a month or so, I don't make any money. That drives all of my behavior. I need to know everything from you. I need access to you. You need to be making good decisions in a quick manner, and we need to understand each other. There needs to be clarity and specific expectations. I'm not imposing that on you. What I'm suggesting is that's going to make your life a lot easier. You're going to look at two resumes. You're probably going to want to talk to both of those people. You're going to make one of them an offer, and 90% of the offers that you make are going to get accepted because I cover myself. I make sure I know everything that's going on in the life of this applicant. And he or she is most likely working with me exclusively because of the way I do what I do. They don't need to work with anyone else. And then the other component of that, Joe, is the specialization. Like pick one technology, pick one geography, pick one industry, and just become an expert at that
Mm.
in such a way that if you're only focusing on one area, you'll become an expert much more quickly. And what you'll find very quickly is people will start to pick up on the fact that this guy knows what he's talking about. If you spread yourself thin and you try to be everything to everyone, you'll never get to a level of expertise that allows you to distinguish yourself in any reasonable capacity. So that's how I feel about that.
Love it. That's really well said. And to boil it down to brass tacks, I don't know if you're a Parks and Recreation fan, but I found
Oh
that
yeah.
show pretty funny, right? So I've
Ron
been told,
Swanson.
yeah, that's the thing. I've been told that some people think Ron Swanson's character is based on me. To people that are close to me. And one of his sayings was don't half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing.
Yeah.
And it's good advice. Like it's really good advice. You
Yeah.
can't be everything to everybody. It's like your personal dealings with people. If you're not authentic, people will see right through it. And it doesn't matter what it is that you're doing that's disingenuous, people can pick up on phoniness and they can pick up on genuineness. And they're either going to like you or
Well,
they're not, you know?
yeah, the other interesting thing about that, Joe, and I joke about it sometimes, is if you never make anything up, if you always tell the truth and do what you say you're going to do, you don't have to remember what you said.
Right.
So it's kind of lazy in that regard. I don't have to ever remember what I said. Just what's the truth? That's what I said. It's like one of the funniest Ron Swanson lines would say, somebody was asking him, do you have any mental illness in your family? And he says, well, I got an uncle that does yoga.
Yeah. I remember that. I remember that. That's a good line too. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's such good stuff. So you get all this experience, you wind up with a chunk of money, you build a house, you realize, hey, I don't want to work with this environment, with these people, et cetera, et cetera. When you first started out, what was the best thing you did, and what was the biggest mistake you made when you started out on your own?
The best thing popped right into my head. We took a, was on somebody else's podcast talking about this. I took this was from my mentor. He's like, most entrepreneurs, no matter what the business is, they start by spending money. They start by doing things that are not necessary. Don't do that. Okay. And then what that means is, among other things, is we didn't rent a space. We rented B space and paid half the rent. And then we redid the space to our liking and it looked fantastic. And the difference between really good B space and A space is not that big a difference. And we didn't have a lot of clients coming to the office. So that was saved a lot of money. And I signed a longer lease because I was confident and I got a better annual rate and lower interest. And then the furniture's thing. There are warehouses all over this country full of furniture where entrepreneurs took it to die because they dropped 50 grand on desks and chairs and fancy paintings before they made a dime. And it was incredible, Joe, how much beautiful furniture. And I was getting it for 30 cents on the dollar.
Mm,
And then I decided I love to train people, and I was trained very well. So I know how to train people very well. So I'm not going to hire senior people. I'm going to hire people with no experience because most of the recruiters that I had worked with at other companies by then, they were clearly not A players. They were mediocre at best. And they all had assumptions that they made. They all had bad habits. They needed to be deprogrammed. They didn't understand the relationship side of things. They wanted transactions. They wanted numbers. So there were, for a lot of reasons, I hired junior people because you get appreciation, more appreciation. You get more loyalty. You get more energy. And once the stuff I teach you starts working, you get pretty optimistic about how much money you can make,
mm,
and it's all in a good cause. So that approach, like I said to somebody the other day, why are you getting incorporated if you don't yet have to send out an invoice? The invoice is the only reason you need to be incorporated. So wait, it only costs 150 bucks, but why spend the money? Well, if you don't send an invoice out for a couple months, you can save yourself some money. There's all kinds of ways to approach starting a business like that. I guess you could call it fiscally responsible, or you could call it frugal, it just made sense to me.
yep.
Um, the biggest mistake I made, gosh, that's nothing is coming to mind. And I don't mean that in maybe the mistakes were later on. I think the biggest mistake that I made, Joe, is that we sold the company when I was under duress.
Mm,
Um, and what we did, because none of us, there were two of us, had experience selling a company. I watched my old boss sell the company, but I wasn't part of the due diligence. He just kind
sure.
of, I watched it from afar. And he told me what was going on, but that's very different than actually doing the work. And what
Yep.
we didn't do is we didn't dig into the culture of the acquiring organization. We did a really good job on the fiscal due diligence, but we didn't do enough work into the culture. And the culture is what cost me my earnout at that. And then the earnout was a stupid idea too. It was my partner's idea, and I'm not faulting him, but it's like if you're going to sell your company, and somebody could argue this point, I'm sure, take the money and go. Don't wait around for any of the money in some sort of an earnout. If they want you to stick around to do knowledge transfer, sign a consulting contract. Don't get out of the equity piece. Take your money and cash your check. So I'd say those weren't at the start, but those were two of my biggest mistakes.
Got it. So for listeners that don't know what an earnout is, let's just say you sell your business and you're supposed to get 100,000 bucks for your business. Let's keep the numbers nice and easy. An earnout is essentially we're going to give you 60,000 bucks now. And then assuming that the company does well over 6 months, 1 year, 18 months, whatever the number is, and agreed upon metrics, we'll give you the other 40,000 either after those metrics are hit or on benchmarks as those metrics are hit. And so what Mark's saying is we were like oil and water. And so the earnout went away because we couldn't get along well enough. I couldn't exist in this shitty environment long enough to get my money. It became not worth it to me to stick around to get my money. I wanted to get out and go do something else. So I let it go. So that's what
Yeah,
an earnout is.
that is the earnout piece is correct. The other piece is there's a little more to that story. We had an office in Boston and an office in Orlando. I was in the
Mm,
office in Orlando. My partner was in Boston, which I'm originally from. Um, they didn't tell us that the only reason they bought us was because their biggest client, JP Morgan, they promised them an office in Boston, so they bought us. They had no interest in the Florida office. So
mm.
they took indirect and direct action to get rid of me um, sooner than I had ever anticipated. And they turned down client deals. I had a contract to sign with Disney, and all we had to do was have a PO box in Los Angeles, and they refused to spend the $500. So there was all kinds of they threw landmines in front of me, and they completely denied what it was they were doing. It took me a sec to figure it out, but I'm like, this is bullshit.
Yeah,
But I don't think the earnout, even if that wasn't the case, I still would not be a fan of the earnout. I think taking the money up front is the way to go.
for sure. Yeah, so just translation, they fucked Mark on the earnout is a better way to say it. So he won't say it, but I will. So it
Kinda.
is, yeah, and look, it is what it is. And when there's money involved, it's really hard to trust people. And everybody starts off with the best intentions and saying the right things. And then the bullets start flying and the rubber hits the road. And you just never know how people are going to respond to it. So is what it is. It's a life lesson for sure. And look, Mark's still sitting here, really successful, got a lot of good things going in his life. That didn't make him or break him, but he sure learned a lesson from it, and he just shared that lesson with us. So if you find yourself in a position where you're selling a business and somebody wants to hold back some funds, just don't do it. Like, just say no thanks. Let's figure
Mhm.
out a way for this to be final. And to his point, there's a legitimate reason for the founder and or previous owner to do a knowledge transfer, to do some type of training, to do some type of workup after the business is sold. That's very legitimate. There's another way to do it, which Mark already said. It's let them hire you as a consultant. That's fine.
Mhm.
I got my money. It's in the bank. I'll still work for you and do what you need to do. But I don't
Mhm.
want any of my compensation tied to it for the blood, sweat, and tears I put into the business. So, yeah, that's great. That's a great thought process. So, yeah, you wind up having to sell your business under duress, which is a tough position to be in because even if you want to be patient and or negotiate, you've got other pressures that are driving your decision making. Um, so you're done, you sell it, uh, you go through the dance on the earnout. What do you do after that? What happens next for you?
Well, the whole time that story is going on, I'm in and out of the court system. And
Mm.
to your point earlier, I filed, I believe this is correct. It's close enough. 2002, and I signed the final dissolution of marriage in 2011.
Oh my
So
God.
I was in court for 9 years, and she went through seven different attorneys. I sat in front of six or seven different judges, more than one of which 6, 12, 18 months in we'd sit down and I'd put my hand on the Bible and swear that I was going to tell the truth. And then the judge would look up and say, okay, so why are we here today? And I'm like, you got to be shitting me. You didn't read anything. So we're
Right.
we're gonna do this for another 18 months before you get up to speed. And the whole time she was doing exactly what you said, taking advantage of the fact that she was a woman.
Mm,
And she was very bright. And she, unbeknownst to me, because I didn't realize anyone was like this, but that sounds naive now. She was evil, and she only wanted to hurt me, and she was willing to hurt the kids to hurt me. So
mm,
it was, and I was the momentum guy at the company. So when my mojo got sapped, it affected the whole company. And so there was all these moving parts that were putting pressure on just dump this thing. And I'm like, I want to hang on to this thing, but I can't put you guys through this anymore because she's showing up at the office. She's making phone calls to my clients. She's calling my employees, telling them bad things about me. I mean, she should have been in jail. But to your point earlier, that's not the way that justice system works. And
it's
Joe,
not.
frankly, I believe women should be protected in that system because there's a lot of bad guys out there. But three domestic violence injunctions that were all complete bullshit to keep my kids away from me for 6 and 8 weeks at a time. And, doing it the first time was like, okay, I guess they're going to let her get away with that. But the second time and the third time, no one's going to step in and say, this is crazy. You know, he doesn't even have a traffic ticket to his name, you know? So anyway, get
No,
off
it's
that
it's
soapbox for a sec.
no, it's a good topic because look, most you can't see me all the way on camera, but I'm 6'3", and even in good shape, I'm 220. I'm a big fucking guy. I just am.
Yeah,
Always have
me
been.
too. Me too.
And yeah, so my wife, and like that doesn't surprise me at all. So, and I've been married to my wife for 33 years. So I'm fortunate that I haven't had to deal with some of the things a lot of other people have had to deal with. But at one point, we have three sons now, but at one point we had two of them, and the younger one hit the older one in the head with a golf club because he was pissed at him in the backyard. So this happened right before I got home from work. And at that point in time, I was still wearing a shirt and tie for the job that I had. So I
Mhm.
come in, my wife's triaging the older one's head. He wound up needing, I don't know, four staples or something in his head because he split his scalp open. He didn't have any long-term injuries. He just had to stop the bleeding. So we looked at everything, and I'm the blood and guts guy. So I said, just, take care of him. Let me change my clothes real quick, and I'll take him to the emergency room. So we're in the hallway, and I go to take my tie off, and I'm telling you, I elbowed my wife in the face while I took my tie off harder than I've hit guys in fights that
Mm.
I've been in. And my wife doubled over and she's holding her eye. And I'm like, okay, look, I'm sorry, but there's no way a guy that looks like me can show up to the emergency room with a kid with a hole in his fucking head and a wife with a
Mhm.
black eye and not wind up in prison. So
Yep.
you're gonna have to put a stake on that thing and stay home because he needs stitches.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. I get that.
And so just circumstances can make it look really bad. And if someone that's the problem with the court system. One of the many problems I would say with the court system is most people assume that if you're going to file documents with a court, that they're truthful and
Hmm.
legitimate. And nobody ever looks at them and says, hey, is this real or is this bullshit? Is this person absolutely just lying and making shit up?
Yeah.
Or is there some modicum of truth to what's filed? And it sounds like you end up having to deal with that on multiple occasions. And it sucks.
Well, the interesting thing is one of the things I remember, and all of this is choices, right? It's all like you've suggested it a couple times, and I can tell it's already it's part of your DNA. Hardship makes you make a choice, and there's only two choices. It's like I'm going to whine and complain and blame somebody or something else, or I'm going to get up off the floor, get my shit together, and get back to work. And that's always been my only choice. And I'm not looking for any credit for it. It was just like that other choice sucks. That doesn't do anything for me. But I remember when the cops came to the house to take me away. I didn't know they were coming. And because I didn't know she had filed a domestic violence injunction on the same day that I filed for divorce in response to the divorce papers.
Holy
Like
Christ.
that, if two and two's not four. But I opened the door and it was a beautiful $1.5 million home in winter. It was gorgeous. And the door was big and I was in my man den. I just cracked a beer and I'd taken my tie off. I was at a conference all day. I opened the door and there's two Winter Park policemen there in uniform. And I could just tell that I don't even think I responded. I just looked at them like I look at everybody with a smile on my face, with a sense of contentment and happiness, and in a state of humility and gratitude. That's what I go for as often as possible. That's just who I am. That makes me happy. And you could tell these two guys looked at me like they were expecting a homicidal maniac. And as soon as they made that, as soon as both of them recognized what was going on, one of them goes, "Hey, let me call the chief and see if there's an alternative to this." And I'm like, "Thanks," but there wasn't. And they
Yeah.
took me up to the bedroom with a trash bag, and I threw 10 or 15 pieces of clothing into a trash bag, and I never walked back into that house again, ever. I lost it all. So yeah, but that's an 11-year story, so we don't have time for that.
Nope, I hear you. But yeah, hey, look, we're growing like crazy as a podcast, so there'll be plenty of time to have you back on and talk about whatever we don't get to in our
Cool.
first conversation together. So, um, and look, I really want to get to, and we'll get there. I don't want to just pivot to it right now and jump to it, but I really want to get to your coaching business because I watched a
Yeah.
couple of your uh, videos and I looked at your website and I loved some of the questions that were on your website, and I think there's a ton of value there, and I want the audience to hear you talk about them. So,
Thank you.
um, yeah, you're so okay, so we know that the company is struggling because you're fighting battles on multiple fronts. Let's fast forward to the point where you've kind of got all of this behind you. What is your state of mind? What is your state in life? And where do you go from there? Are you in your car going through dumpsters for food? Are you living in a trailer? What do you got going on? Where do you wind up when you restart and start building the second business?
Well, there's a couple of interesting things that I remember. I spent $40,000 making copies. I remember that. Um, I was the last financial statement that I filled out prior to the divorce. I remember filling it out, and the net worth was 3.2 million. And and I remember the insurance company had just put a value on the contents of the home for a new policy, and they'd assessed the contents of the home at 300 grand. I lost all of that.
Mm,
And when it was all said and done, my attorney cut me a check for $90,000 and I sent it to Discover Card to pay off my credit card bills, which I'd been using to buy groceries. And I think I moved 6 or 7 times to different apartments and places to live. But, normally a mom would want her children when they were with his father to be in a comfortable, safe place, but she didn't give a shit about that. So
mm,
it was just a constant battle. But I, you know, the in hindsight, the opportunity to be mother and father to my 3 children as they each individually took a stake in what was actually going on. They went from, I don't understand, mommy's saying this, daddy's saying that. And I used to tell them, look, I don't care who it is. If you want to see if someone's being truthful with you, the best litmus test I know of is see what they say and watch what they do. And
you
when
bet.
those things are the same, integrity is usually right there. But when those things are not the same, you should question everything. And I question everything anyway. So there was a transitional period. Then I just remember it being a blur. I was both of my daughters, one of them won 3 state championships in volleyball. The other one won a national championship with her club. My son was a little league all-star. They were all extracurricular, straight A students, summa and magna cum laude in college. And I just got them. I got the 2 girls into college, and then I went to Savannah, Georgia to visit them many, many times over the 7 years that the two of them were there together, 4 years, 3 years together. And I was just running, and I still had enough connections where I could make a placement um, at a very high level, and I could put 30 or 40 grand in my pocket,
Yeah,
which is that's all I really needed to live on, because I was all on my own at the time. So I was just trying to protect and save my children from things that I thought they needed protection from. And I was correct on some level, but I discovered pretty quickly that the children are a lot more resilient than we believe them to be.
sure.
And hardship creates hard people. It creates people capable of hardship, people capable of fortitude and withstanding. These are I raised my kids in Winter Park, Florida. Everyone in Winter Park is rich. All the kids are spoiled. I remember when one of my daughters came to me and said, I got straight A's. Sydney got straight A's. She got a Mercedes. I said, oh, let's go get an ice cream. What flavor do you like? You know? And
Exactly.
so, and so ironically, Joe, I was given this opportunity to teach all these life lessons to my kids, particularly about life is not fair. Life is unjust. People can do bad things, but life is wonderful. And it's exactly what you make of it. It's entirely your choice. Life can happen to you or it can happen for you.
Yep.
And that's your choice. And that's what you're watching here. And so it was really a unique opportunity to just model behavior, if that makes sense.
makes complete sense. And yeah, it's funny. I have my youngest son got when we lived in New Hampshire. We lived in New Hampshire for a long time, close to 15 years, and he got into
Mhm.
one of the preparatory schools that feeds Ivy Leagues up there.
Mhm.
He applied and he got accepted at a couple and waitlisted at a couple and blah blah blah. And so he comes to me and says, "I want to go to the school." And I said, "Yeah, cool story, bro. Like, why don't you do your homework? Like, your grade point's a 3.0, you're a 4.0 student. Like, you're not committed to school. I could put you in that school or I could buy another income producing property. Those are my two options.
Mhm.
Why would I invest this money in you when you're not willing to invest in yourself? So, like, you can buckle down for a semester and show me that you mean it, and then we can talk about it, or fuck off. I'm not doing it. Like, no
Yep.
thanks."
Yep.
And and he didn't like he didn't want to do the work. He wanted the prestige that went with it.
Mhm.
And he certainly was capable of making it in the schools and whatnot, but he didn't want to do the work. And so, fine by me. Like, you're the one that's got to make those choices and deal with the consequences. I explained to him what I thought he should do, but what do I know?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic all unto itself. I wrote a book on a short one, 35 pages or so in 2018 on why college was college degrees might as well be toilet paper. And when you're helping people find work, you know what companies are looking for, and they're not looking for college degrees anymore.
That's right.
And the trades are really picking up some noise. And yeah, I think 80% of the kids that go to college are wasting their time and money. I think unless you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer, unless you need a certificate or a degree to do what you do legally, I think college is a waste of time. And I can talk about that topic forever. So, so and you know as well as anybody, Joe, the other thing they do is they come back with an ideological stink that they didn't leave with, you know. So it's a joke. And it's just worse now. I mean, what's going on these college campuses is a fucking mess.
It's wild, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
so Here's my biggest complaint about college. The theory, and look, I'm a big Milton Friedman fan. Like, I'm like, just politically, I'm uber libertarian.
Hmm.
So fiscally, I'm crazy conservative. I think we should keep as much of our money as possible. The government should run basically the army and say in the court system and say the fuck out of
Hmm.
everybody else's business. And socially, do what you want, sleep with who you want. I could care less
Yeah.
until you start hurting or infringing on somebody else. I don't care at all. Do your thing.
Yeah,
I'm not going to change
I'm
you.
with you. I'm
Yep.
with you. I don't and you know the other interesting thing is, and I'm sure you're one of these as well, is I didn't stop talking ever. And I didn't
Yeah.
stop telling people how I felt ever. I remember the first time I walked into a store with my girlfriend. We wanted to get a steak and we were driving by this really good meat store that I used to go to when I was younger. I said, "What do you think, honey? Let's get a steak." "Okay, let's go in." Get out of the car and I walk up to the door and this guy's wearing a black mask. And he said, "You can't come in here without a mask on." And I said, "Well, do you have any masks? Because I want a steak." He said, "Yeah, they're
Right.
$3." And I got pissed. I didn't get pissed at him, but I got pissed inside. And I looked at my girlfriend. And I said, "Let's go. I'm not paying money for a mask to go get a piece
Yeah.
of meat." And and that was the beginning of that whole COVID experience for me. And I never wore a mask. The only time I ever wore a mask was when I had to go into a gym to watch my grandson play because I wasn't going to punish him for my political beliefs. But I knew that shit was bullshit day one, you know?
I, I remember standing in my living room yelling at the television and my wife going, "You got to calm down." I'm like, "You don't understand what's happening here. This has nothing to
Yeah.
do with science. This is a power grab. This is a power grab by people in charge that want more control
Yep.
over our lives. You're not understanding what's happening, and it's
Yep.
happening right in front of us."
Yeah. A lot of people took a long time to figure that out. And I think that, you know, it's what they say about propaganda. It works. You know, that's why people use it because it works. And you get these same people saying the same phrases over and over. And I remember when that woman that used to stand next to Fauci with the scarf on and the blonde hair, I can't remember her name.
I know
She
who you're talking
yeah,
about.
she left. And somebody asked her if someone dies in the hospital from something else with COVID, is that a COVID death? She said, "We count those as COVID deaths." I said, I turned off the TV. I said, "I'm never listening to you people again." You
Yeah,
know,
it's
that's a
I call it
lie.
dying. Yeah, I call it dying with COVID
Yeah,
or dying from COVID. And I would
that's right.
argue that maybe 25, and I'm making it up, I'm conjecturing completely, but I'm probably not wrong.
Yeah.
25% of the deaths counted as COVID were from COVID.
Yep.
The other 75% are people who happened to have COVID at the point that they left the earth. Like,
Yeah, they were doing stuff like, our hospital beds are all full. I'm like, that's because you're scaring the shit out of people. You know, most of these people have anxiety and they're not physical maladies. I mean,
yeah,
and the scaring the kids was what pissed me off the most, you know?
yeah. Well, we screwed the kids over on school. The hospital thing is such a scam because when they say the hospital beds were full, they're talking about ICU beds. There was
Right.
literally hundreds of rooms in the same hospital that had empty beds at the same time. Literally
Yep.
hundreds
It was
across the
all
country.
of it. Yeah, all of it was just a big lie. And I suppose in hindsight now, because we have that, it's the thing that bothered me most the whole time was how stupid they thought we were, how
Yeah.
condescending they were. And I guess there was enough stupid people that they could get away with that. But that always pissed me off. Like, what do you, I, how, you don't fully understand that I can see right through you? Who do you think I am? You know?
Yeah. Well, and the problem is they were right. They could get away with it because there were so many people that acted out of fear and didn't
Hmm.
just apply some basic common sense. Like
That's right.
the first outbreak, like I can do math. I've always been good at math. Even as a kid, I was doing whatever, sixth grade math in second grade. It's come very naturally to me, whatever.
Hmm.
That's great. But look, I got a really shitty temper, so I got my challenges just like anybody else. So it used to be, you want to go to the parking lot? I'd be there like before you could. Yeah, I want to go in the parking lot. And then I realized, hey, this isn't a really good way to solve problems. Like it hurts to win fights. Forget losing them.
Yes.
You know.
Yes. Yes,
But
it does. Yeah, yeah. I've won a couple of fights in my day, and I was getting stitches and ruining clothes on both occasions. So
exactly, it's not such a.
yeah.
It's definitely better to win them than lose them, but it's no walk in the park for
No.
sure. But
Yeah.
the first group of deaths around COVID were in a senior living facility in Washington
Hmm.
because it came over from China on a plane and wound up there. And so they took uh, a tiny segment of our population and applied the death rates of that population, which is the biggest at risk group of people in our population: elderly,
Hmm.
confined, never go outdoors, multiple comorbidities. And they applied that rate across the entire US population and they used it
Yeah.
to scare people. That's all
Yeah.
they did.
Yeah.
And
My biggest regret now or resentment now, and I'm working on getting rid of it because it doesn't serve me, is no one's
mm,
getting in trouble.
yeah.
That pisses me off to no end, you know.
Well,
But
and to me, the worst part of it to me is all the hidden stuff, like you talked about. Well, and it's largely around children to me, because look at what we did to kids. We took them out of
yeah.
schools. We fucked up their social progression. How many kids went home to an abuser, to an alcoholic, to a substance user, to a terrible environment, and had no way out for over a
Hmm.
year
Hmm.
because we were too stupid to say, hey, no kids are having ill effects towards this. Like it's almost none.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Yeah.
Get them back in school and let them be kids. And we won't know for 20 years how bad we fucked that up until they're out in the real world and experience whatever they experience as, young adults and middle-aged people.
Yeah, I think, and I said this to a few people, if my children were younger and they were going through that, if they were in the school system when this was going on, I would probably be in jail
Mm.
because there's
Yep.
no way. I spent so much time at my children's schools. Everyone knew who I was. Everyone knew I gave a shit about my kids. Everyone knew I was doing homework with my kids. I was reading books with my kids. I made it to every practice, every game, every event. I didn't miss anything. And I was usually the only single guy there, which turned into a lot of women trying to set me up with their friends, which I never took that on because I'm like, you're not ruining my volleyball experience when I fall out of like with you after 3 dates. I'm not doing that.
Exactly. And then you've got to do the Mason Dixon line on the bleachers, and everybody's got to pick sides and
That's the
forget
world
all
I
that
just
stuff.
came from. Both of my daughters read speeches, all the girls on the team, their last day of their senior year. It was a big event. And both of my daughters went out and made speeches about their father. They didn't mention their mother at all. And
Man, that's
so
great.
it's so great and so sad at the same time, you know,
Yeah, it's
at the
great that you
same
took
time.
such an active role in their life. But to your point, you talked about it earlier. You don't get to choose how everything happens in your life, but you do get to choose how you react to it. And you
That's right.
reacted in a way that you thought was best for your children, and you always kept them front of mind and put them first. And I think as a parent, that's both your responsibility and your privilege to be straightforward,
Yeah,
you know?
I always wanted to ask the judge, and I didn't get to ask until the last judge when I was representing myself. And she was a relatively young woman, and it was my opinion that all these other older guys were just jaded from so many divorces that they really just didn't care about anything anymore. And she still did. You could see it.
Mhm.
And I said to her, I said, I was really hoping one of these judges would step up and say, okay, what's in the best interest of the children? Not her, not me, them.
Yeah.
And no one ever even took that position, Joe. It was astounding to me.
It's wild, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's something else. All right, so we've solved the world's problems on COVID. We're both very clearly intelligent. I think that was obvious from our conversation around that. Let's pivot a little bit and talk about your coaching business because I want to spend plenty of time on that because I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a ton of value there, not only from hearing it from you, but and just for all our listeners, we're going to include the link to Mark's business in our show notes. So you're not going to have to look far if you want to get in touch with him and want to talk to him about his services. So we'll make that real easy for you.
Thank you.
But um, talk about your coaching business. So you've gone through and built a bunch of experience. What made you start the coaching business? What do you generally focus on? And then I'll ask more questions after you fill in those blanks.
So I think God put me on this earth to be a teacher, to be a mentor, to be a leader. And I was a leader on my little league team. You know, I was a leader before I was a sentient being, I think. And because of my dad, probably. And my favorite part about the staffing business was teaching people how to do it, training
Mm,
people. But the other teaching is obviously preparing people for interviews, talking to people about their dreams and their goals and what they like to do and what makes them tick, everything that could go into the decision to change jobs, which is everything in your life. And because I made the choice to go, I'm not just doing this professionally. I'm going to get to know these people personally. I want some friends to come out of this. Not everyone has to be my friend, but there are certain expectations that I have. And one of them goes right back to what we've been talking about. And that is if you blame other people for your shit, I don't want anything to do with you. So
I
one of
love
the
it.
prerequisites that you need to have to work with me is personal accountability. And if I get a sense of if there's victim stuff going on instead of learning from the hardship or the mistakes, we're going to part ways quick. So for anybody who's interested, we spend a lot of time on that. And I can deprogram people that's not in their DNA. They're just kind of like in a weak state. Because another thing about people that I help, Joe, is most of them are in a state of confusion of some kind.
Mm,
So they're not as confident as they might normally be. They maybe have some self-doubt that's crept in, maybe a little shame if they got laid off, confidence shaken. Like that happened to me. My confidence was shaken to my core in
mm,
my experience, and it took me a while to get it back. So I'm really focusing on people. And the other thing I like is I like people that have aspirations to lead because I don't think that we have enough leaders. And we definitely don't have enough leaders. And most leaders suck. They're not leaders at all. They're just managers. And I am a leader. I love to lead. I know how to lead. And everyone that I've ever touched, I've taught them a little bit about leadership. So I can help anybody, which is my curse, right? Because you can't market to everybody. You got to
yeah.
pick a slot and go from there. Diversify maybe later when you build up a little bit of flexibility and profits. But yeah, I want to talk to people. I think most of them will be men, although I'm happy to talk to women. I have great relationships with both of my daughters, and my girlfriend we're really tight. And as much as I consider myself a man's man, I treat women very well, and I have a lot of respect and love for them. But I don't let them get away with anything I don't let a man get away with, you know? So it'd probably be a woman with a bunch of brothers that grew up playing team sports or something, you know? But and I think those men are in a position where their confidence has been shaken for one reason or another, a hardship, a loss, um, some sort of termination of employment. I hate my boss. This place is toxic, even though I really can't stand that phrase, because that means people don't want to fix it. Stop complaining that it's toxic and speak up.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
but to your point at the beginning, I need people that are going to take action because there's a lot of work to do. And then most of what I do, Joe, is why, what does that mean? What does that mean? Tell me about your story. And most people can't tell their own story. I find that. So I take steps back. People want to, can you find me a job? I don't do that anymore. No, what
Mm,
I'm going to do is I'm going to make you a hell of a lot more valuable to the world than you are right now. And I know
yep.
exactly how to do that. And the first step is self-reflection. We're going to talk about the whys and wherefores of who you are and why you're where you are right now and where you'd rather be and why and what's important to you. And that's a conversation I find most people don't ever have with themselves. They need help with that conversation. And because I've had that conversation so many times with so many different people, I'm pretty good at it. And everyone now, not, but can we go looking for work now? No, not yet. Tell me, what's your story? Who are you? Who are you? And why should I be interested in talking to you again? Right. And most people don't have that story. They think they do because it's my story. Of course I can tell my own story. I'm like, yeah, but not clearly, not
Yeah.
articulately, not concisely, not influentially. You want people to take action. You don't want them to just listen and enjoy the story, right? That's a different story. So a lot of work. That's a couple hours of work, right? And I'll trade my time for money for that. And quite honestly, Joe, if everyone just came to me to do just that, they'd be a lot better off.
Mm,
Most of the people that leave me, they come to me really frustrated. Most of the frustration is because of a lack of clarity on what to do and how to do it. And all I do is clear everything up. No, you can think about that this way. You can think about this that way. You can look at this a little differently. I wouldn't recommend that tactic at all. That doesn't seem to be working for you. Try this. And it's just a series of investigative questions and then advice based on my experience. And the way I look at it is first I got knowledge from my mentor. Then I got experience and I earned, right? And now it's time to kind of give back. It's time to give back. And my knowledge has become, I think, wisdom. And wisdom is where you can start taking action on some of this stuff. So I can help people start their own company. I can help people get a new job. But most of all, I want to help people just become as valuable as possible. Because if you identify a complaint in the marketplace, I don't care what the profession is, it's it's like I'm worried about my job. I don't like my job. I don't like my boss. I'm not doing what I want to do. There's some friction going on. And the best way to combat that, the only way to create any level of job security, which is a complete myth, always has been,
yep.
is to be as valuable as you possibly can, to be a critical and strategic thinker that can solve problems that are difficult, that are very impactful when solved, and then they can take that solution and explain it to people that are not technical or don't understand in a clear and concise and simple way, that take the complex and make it simple. Those are the skills that I think everyone should be seeking, and I can gift them to you with a few hours of time.
I love it. So I swear to God, guys, Mark and I didn't rehearse this. I didn't know what he was going to say when I asked him the question, but I want to read you the title of the episode we're going to publish next Tuesday. So, we do 3 interviews. We publish 3 interviews a week, and then we do 2 episodes where it's just me opining on a subject or giving tips on how to do things, et cetera, et cetera. So, my episode next week is why people choose a victim mentality over a growth mindset. Swear to God, I wrote it this morning. So, because I was watching stuff and I heard all these people complaining. And I'm like, why do people want so badly to be fucking victims? I don't understand it.
I know. I know.
And so I did some research on it because I wanted to, if you can't fix the mindset, if you don't understand what drives the mindset, and it's foreign to me. I don't know. I rarely feel like a victim. Have I felt sorry for myself? Sure, I'm a human being. Have I felt like I've been screwed over in certain situations? Sure, I'm a human being. Have I dwelled on it and allowed it to drag me down into the mud for an extended period of time? Not generally. Not
No,
generally.
I mean, it's interesting. It just kind of popped into my head, so I'll say it, and you give me poetic license to use whatever language I want. I got
Mhm.
royally fucked. Okay. I got royally fucked. And I'm still laughing. I'm still here. People still they tell me every once in a while I look pretty good. I can still move around, and I got contributions to make, man. So the victim thing just doesn't, like, you want to be that guy, the old guy on the rocking chair on the porch in your underwear with a shotgun yelling at the kids to get off your fucking lawn. No, no, thank you. I'm not doing that. So,
Oh my gosh. No, keep
I don't
going.
get
You're
it.
on a roll. Keep
I
going.
don't I don't get it either, Joe. I don't get it either. No, I want you to take me where you want me to go. And so I'll I could go off on that for a while, but I won't do that to you.
No, no. All I was going to say was like, there's a lot of people. It's always been funny to me how people get offended about cussing. Like Bill Cosby, he used to talk all the time about, oh, you shouldn't cuss. It speaks poorly on young men and blah, blah, blah. Well, hey, Bill, I'm not drugging and raping people. Think I got a
Yeah.
leg up on you here in the
Yeah.
morality
Yeah.
clause,
Yeah.
pal. But you had
Yeah.
said you got royally fucked. Is there another phrase you could use that would convey what actually happened that's better than royally fucked? I don't think there is. I think it's the absolute right way to describe it. Why should we not use that language when it fits perfectly in a situation? I legitimately don't
Yeah,
understand
no,
it.
I agree. I think the thing about cussing is discernment,
Yeah, right.
understand who you're talking to, understand their sensitivities. I mean, I don't talk to my daughters the way I talk to you,
For sure.
So I mean, and just use your brain, just be that. And that's another thing about communication that I teach, that I'm aghast at how many people don't learn this from their parents. It's speak with clarity. um, if you don't know something, you know what you say? I don't know, right?
Right.
When someone says I don't know to me, that to me is a very, very strong sign of self-confidence,
And
right?
intelligence.
And intelligence, yes. And so I talk about communication a lot because, like, people will say to me, well, I go, well, what do you do? I'm a director. Yeah, what have I seen any of your movies? Oh, I'm not that kind of director. Well, then speak clearly. Tell me what kind of director you. Why are you giving me a word that means nothing to me? Right?
Right.
That you're going to go out and give that word to people that you want to hire you? That's why we got to go back in and start talking about your story, dude. You're not allowed in public yet. I need a few hours with you. So, and it's
Yeah,
just,
it's funny.
you have, Joe, you spend your whole life preparing people for interviews, and then they come back from the interview and you get feedback from them and feedback from the client. There's your whole picture. I know exactly what you did right. I know exactly what you did wrong. I know exactly what you should have done differently. And then that becomes ammunition for the interview preparation beforehand, because all that learning then becomes wisdom. And then you start sending, most of the people that go out are doing what you're telling them to do. I'll tell people all day long at the end of an interview, the most important thing you can do, if you like them and you sense they like you, is ask them for the job. And
I
you
say
can
that
do
all the
it.
time. I say that all the time.
Yeah,
It's shocking how many people won't, at the end of an interview, say, I don't want this to go without saying, I want this job. I
that's
want
right.
you to hire me.
That's right.
Like
And you can,
that statement can set you apart.
it's the number one thing. If there's a tie, That's the runner. That goes to the runner. You just basically say, look, I really enjoyed my conversation with you. I really appreciate you taking the time. I get the sense I can bring a lot to the table here, but I can also learn a lot from you. And I just wanted to let you know, I'd be honored if you chose me for this position. I really would love to have this job. And I'm telling you right now, I can't tell you how many times somebody said that and got the job right there. But I also can't tell you how many times I would say, did you ask for the job? Oh, no, I didn't feel comfortable. Okay. Well, guess what kind of feedback I'm going to get, you know?
How
So,
comfortable are you
yeah.
going to be when you're hungry because you can't buy your groceries because you don't have a fucking job? Like,
The first placement I ever made, Joe, was a electrical engineer, really nice young guy, three boys, single parent. He was just about to lose his house. The bank was getting ready to foreclose on him, and I found him a job. And he said I saved his life. He was suicidal, he said.
good Lord.
And that's how I began my recruiting career. And I was like, this is what God wants me to do, clearly, you know. And I'm this middleman. I would have been a great sports agent. I would have been a great attorney. I was the negotiator, mediator, in the middle guy that got two parties to come together that were disparate and apart for whatever reason. I was a middle child, so I did that all through my childhood with my siblings. So
It's funny how I actually fill the same role in multiple areas of my life, which is funny to me because like you and I seem very similar in that I'm not touchy feely in any way, shape, or form. You know, I'm not what you consider somebody that's soft or fuzzy. You know, I got a pretty hard edge to me, but what I am not is judgmental. And
mhm.
I'm also very genuine. So like people know exactly what they're getting. They when you talk to me, it's funny because uh, I've always been this way, and this is a much more polished version of I was than a younger man. And
Mhm. Yeah.
like we talked about before, I'm a big guy, and there was always I would always hear rumblings of people like, "Oh, I wonder what Joe does to his wife when the doors close." Like I'm some type of wife beater, and I do. I look like a Neanderthal, beer guzzling, wife beating kind of guy. I'm not, but that I get it. But my wife finally told me, here's the thing that you don't understand because you're not like this. Most people behave one way in public and then they behave a very different way in
Yep.
private. So they think if Joe's willing to be that direct and straightforward in public, what's he like when he thinks nobody's watching? She's like, they don't understand you're just this way all the time. Like they don't
Yeah,
get
no,
that
I
that's
I
the
would
version.
I suspect most of the people that know me well would say the same thing about me. They'd probably give me a little bit more fuzzy. I can get emotional. I think raising two daughters on my own um softened me a bit. Not in a I don't say that in a negative way because I think
Yeah.
fortitude is one of the strongest assets a man can have. It's one of the strongest assets a human can have is fortitude. And you can't teach that, you know. I think you either have that or you don't. But that's the same thing with leaders. I mean, it's a really interesting discussion. Are leaders born or are they made? I think it's a little bit of both.
What so the born part's pretty straightforward from a made perspective, right? It's nature versus nurture. From your perspective, or what are your thoughts on what are the crucibles or trainings or things someone needs to go through to develop their leadership skills, whether they were born with any or not born with any, right? Because if you can make
Yeah.
leaders, how do you do it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's less about the making and more about the qualification. I think that the potential, you have to be willing to take responsibility for the well-being of other people. That's just a prerequisite, and a lot of us aren't willing to do that.
Mm,
And I think a big mistake that companies make is they promote people into leadership positions that are very competent individual contributors that really don't want to lead. They're just convinced that it's the next step in the ladder, and so
yep.
they walk around with a title, but they're not leaders. They're not empathetic. They're not good listeners. They can't command a room. They can't bring momentum into a situation. They talk too much. They don't listen well. So I think the most important quality is you have to be willing to take that responsibility on, and it's a huge responsibility, and you must take it seriously.
Mm,
And so if I sense that someone has that, I can teach them. If they don't have that, I don't think I can.
yep. Yeah, it's funny. you talked about it. I find a very similar experience. I was a captain of every team I ever played on by default. Like it just kind of happened, not
Me
because I
too. Yeah.
wanted to be captain, but I want to control my destiny.
Yeah.
And if I can affect others around me to help me control my destiny, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And it's from a baseball. So from the time I was 3 till the time my wife and I got married, I was going to be a professional baseball player. Period. That's when you asked me, that was it. That was the whole thing. I did well in school. I could have literally done or been anything, but I was focused on that because I loved it, and I loved all my experiences with it, et cetera, et cetera. However, I grew up in a team mentality because I just wanted to be on good teams because the better the team was, the more I got noticed, and it got me to college, and then pro scouts come and watch good college teams and blah blah blah. And so my wife would always tell me, you need to be more selfish. You need to be look out more for your own interests. And I'm like, I'm telling you, it's wrong. That's a wrong approach. I
Hmm.
understand it. I understand intuitively it feels like that's right, but I'm telling you it's wrong. You actually get further by making everybody else better. You can go faster by yourself, but you go further leading people. I'm telling you. And so
Yeah.
she
No,
watched,
I agree with you. I agree with you. And being a Boston guy, I was a Tom Brady fan, and one of the things that you either love that guy or you hate that guy, and I
right?
get that. I don't think I ever heard him say the word "I," not once. It was always his offensive line. It was always the defense. It was always the receivers, and it was always we. And that's what you're talking about. That's what you're talking about. And Belichick, as whacked out as he's become in his old age, um, he didn't let guys in the locker room that poisoned the well. He didn't care how much you were making or how good you were. If you didn't do what he and Tom Brady wanted you to do, show up early, stay late, work out, strive to be the best there possibly is, they traded you. They got rid of you. And a lot of good guys left because they were just like, I'm not doing that. I'm too good for that. It's like, nah, you got to be a team player or you're not on this team. So
Yep.
I've seen countless examples of that, as I'm sure you have as well.
Yeah, my wife watched one of those, those shows, the 24/7, where they follow a team around. She watched one on Showtime about the San Francisco Giants in spring training,
Mm.
and they were following around the bubble guys. And for those that don't know, in spring and major league spring training, it's a 25-man roster. They typically invite 45, 50 guys, something like that. The guys 40 through 50 know they're not going to make it. But
Hmm.
if you're somewhere between 25 and 40, if you have a good spring training, you can fight your way onto the club.
Hmm.
Um, and so they're following these guys around and they're interviewing them. And my wife watches like 3 of these episodes. She calls me at work and she goes, I've been watching the show and I just got to tell you 2 things. She said, one, I don't know how you lived in this environment. I want to throw up. And like, I'm just
Hmm.
watching the show. And I'm like, yeah, like either love it or you don't. And but like it's win or go sit down. Those are the 2 options when you get to a certain level in
Hmm.
athletics.
Hmm.
And she said, too, now I understand your team mentality because the only people who understand what you're going through are other people going through it. And
Hmm.
even though you're competing with them for jobs, you want them to be successful because you want the team to be better. You just want your best to be better than their best. And I said, there you go. Now you get it. That's
Yeah.
to me what it's all about. If we all compete, I still want to win, but I don't want to win because you lose. I want to beat you. There's a
Hey
difference.
man, Michael Jordan didn't win until Scottie Pippen showed up with Phil Jackson in tow, and it's there's just examples everywhere of that, everywhere. And the guys that are like James Harden,
Yeah.
LeBron James, it's just like they're like, shut up, man. What are you doing? Like, no one likes you. You're in this for yourself, you know. And I don't know. I had a lot of success hiring people with team sport backgrounds because of all those lessons that we're talking about. They know all this stuff.
Yep. I actually asked that question in interviews. Did you participate in team athletics as a kid? That's
Oh yeah.
actually one of my interview questions.
Well,
Yep.
you'll get a kick out of this. I ask questions in interviews that I'm not supposed to ask. I want to know what your dad did for a living. I want to know where you were raised. I want to know what your relationship is like with your brothers and sisters, and I want to know all that stuff. And that's another reason I don't like talking to HR. Gets me in trouble.
Well, it's funny because when I lived in New England, I worked at it's the largest grocery wholesaler in the country, and I really enjoyed my time there. But we recruited a lot from Ivy League schools because, like, we were doing 30 billion in revenue. We could offer a lot of stuff, and we didn't do well with the kids that came out of Ivy League schools. And part of it was the way we had the program set up. We brought them in, and then we didn't actually give them a job for 2 years. They were supposed to learn the business, and then they were going to come with their great ideas and revolutionize everything. And it sounds good, but there's no substitute for someone. We're shipping groceries across the country. There's no
Mhm.
substitute for someone that's been on the receiving dock and on a lift truck and in inventory control, and they know the business. They know what really happens in the business, and you don't get those things from doing a tour of the facility. You get them from being on the receiving dock and dealing with truck drivers at 1 o'clock in the morning when you're doing receiving or you're doing putaways, and you're under duress because you got to get the trucks out, and the polling time is going to close in 2 hours, and you've got 4 hours worth of work left.
Yeah,
And
it's interesting. It makes me think of why it was so helpful for me to be a recruiter first and a sales rep first and then a manager and then just all the operational intelligence. I literally learned how to do everything to start a technical staffing company and sell it. And by doing it, not by learning it, by doing it. And
yeah,
so I'm with you on that. I think that it's like the difference between empathy and sympathy, you know?
that's right. That's right. I always tell people if you're looking for sympathy, you'll find it in the dictionary between shit and syphilis. You're not going to find it with me. I got empathy, but I don't got a lot of sympathy,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
sympathy
I
is
hear
not
you.
useful. It doesn't help people. Sympathy doesn't help people. Empathy
Well,
can, sympathy doesn't.
another way that I've heard, and I'm a big fan of this. I use it now a lot, and I got it from a buddy of mine, which is the difference between being nice and being kind.
Mm,
Nice is kissing someone's ass, telling them what they want to hear. Kind um, is being candid with people. You're actually helping them with your candor, and you can work on your delivery if you want, because you can deliver candor rudely or you can deliver it matter of factly. But I really like that distinction because I think people misuse those words. They interchange those words and they're terribly different meanings.
yeah, for sure. So we've talked a little bit about your coaching business, but you've talked about wanting to scale that so that it's not trading time for money. So it makes perfect sense to me. But what are you trying to accomplish? What are you doing there? Are you putting together courses? Are you putting together seminars? Are you writing books? What are you doing?
Yeah, I've written a ton of stuff, and I've got a couple books that I wrote that I wouldn't consider. I didn't publish them. They're lessons about this stuff, making professional advancement, and things that and all of the steps involved in there. What I envision, and I'm building it, is one-on-one time with me. I'm not going to get rid of that. Then a group time. I envision probably 4 or 5 guys at the same time, maybe over a 6 week period of time, where they get the benefit of each other's knowledge and experience. They get the benefit of mine. And then there's all in the interim, I would send them to like places that you've gone, my website, my YouTube channel, organizing those places better than they're organized now. So they're more topical and sequential, and not just, the first thing you do is load them up and then you start creating playlists and you start titling things and keyword stuff. But I have a ton of content. I just have to structure it in a more digestible fashion. And I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, I'm finding, with that stuff. And it's really getting annoying because I also believe wholeheartedly in the concept that just release it and take the feedback that you get and build a better one. 2.0. That's
Tweak.
what
Yeah,
everybody
right.
that say again.
Tweak it. Yeah, adjust
Tweak it.
it. Yep,
Yeah. There's nothing like customer feedback from people who paid you money. Everything else is just opinion, you know?
that's right.
So those are my challenges. I'm kind of getting in my own way with that, but I'm not in any kind of hurry because I got plenty of other stuff going on. I've got some property and I charge $500 an hour. So with a few hours of work here and there, I can pay my bills. And, And it's worth every cent of it. I got people coming to me, it's like the last guy that I coached, he'd been looking for 6 months, and 2 weeks after we finished, he found a new job. I mean, what's that worth? It's worth a
Right.
lot more than $500, you know? And so,
Yep.
yeah, those are and I think the other part of me, Joe, is this is just a frailty or a fault. I really like this, and
Yep.
I don't want to get away from this. It
Yep.
scares me a little bit, it scares is the wrong word. It makes me concerned that will there be a diminution in the quality of my service delivery as I step away from this? And that's a reasonable concern, but it shouldn't be something that gets in my way. I should just knock that door down, and I will soon.
Yeah, maybe a good way to think about it is you want to like keep some segment of your time free to do this because it's where you sharpen the saw, right?
Mhm.
So you don't want it to go away, but maybe you compartmentalize it and just say whatever the percentage is, 10% of my time is going to be spent on conversations or one-on-one interactions or whatever feels right to you. Because then it doesn't go away. Because I get where you're coming from. Because
Yeah,
this is what keeps you sharp and what keeps you motivated and gives you energy, right?
it does. It does. And I have my own podcast, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that to you. It's called the Imperfect Men's Club. And I just shot an episode a couple hours ago with my buddy who's a successful ex-professional athlete and entrepreneur, and he was a rugby player and dyslexic and overcome quite a bit of hardship to become a highly successful entrepreneur.
Mm.
And the topic of today's episode was Trump derangement syndrome.
It is
You
wild
might
how that guy
enjoy.
can push people's buttons, huh?
Oh man, and we were joking about it, and we don't have to get down that rabbit hole, but it's a fun rabbit hole. But he does it on purpose.
I
People
know.
don't understand that. They don't understand that. You know, I think he's a mastermind. I think he's an incredibly bright guy, and I don't really care when he says stupid shit. And I don't believe he treats women poorly. There's no evidence of that. There's just people saying it. You know.
Yeah.
He was a playboy for a while. Who would be a billionaire in New York City and not be a playboy for a little while? But
Well, especially
his
in the
kids,
80s. People don't know what the 80s were like, man. That was
no,
the whole vibe in the 80s.
it's crazy. Yeah, no, I was an '80s guy. Who are you telling? But it's no. I think the energy he puts out and the consistency, and he's always on. I mean, I don't think people understand like what we're doing right now is very enjoyable, but it's somewhat emotionally taxing. And
Yeah.
you'll be a little tired after this, and so will I. And maybe not for an hour or two. Maybe it will hit us when we go to sleep. I don't know. He does this all day, every day.
For
And
82
and
years.
and the decisions that he's making are way important than the decisions we're talking about.
For sure.
So I don't know. I marvel at the guy, but anyway, it's a plug for my podcast because we haven't done anything to monetize it. We got about 100 episodes out there, and it fits in really nicely because we're both businessmen, we're both entrepreneurs, we're both team sport athletes, we're both dads. So what we talk about there is probably going to come up in a lot of my coaching with people that are interested in that position on things. And if they're
So
not, I don't need to talk. I don't need to talk about politics. I
yeah,
can, but I don't have to. You
I'm the
know.
same. I'm exactly the same way. I can take it
Yeah.
or leave it. I'm educated and like I have my opinions. I'm happy to allow you your opinions. And if we disagree, that's fine. No big
Yep.
deal. We can still
Yep.
be friendly. But it's funny you bring that up because I'm actually talking to some guys out in Arizona about putting together maybe like I don't even know what to call it. I don't know if it's a seminar. I don't know if it's a get together. I don't know if it's a mastermind group for dads in particular. Because I think it's something we don't talk about enough as a country. And I think a lot of the problems that we have in our country could be solved if we could get more men to step up and be fathers to the children that they sired. There's a
Hmm.
difference between being a dad and being a father. Like creating a kid ain't that hard. I've done
Yeah.
it. Like it doesn't take a lot.
No.
But to be a father is a much bigger challenge. And I told my sons, and I have three sons. So I must have just, when you talked about your kids, I know I mislabeled your daughters at the beginning of the
No
episode.
sweat.
But
No sweat.
um, I told my sons, look, it's not my job to be your friend. That's not the job. I'm the only guy that can be your father. And I take that responsibility very seriously. And I love you enough to tell you the truth all the time. And that's going to fucking suck sometimes. Like I had this conversation with all of them when they were
Yeah,
about
yeah,
10.
no, listen, I take pride in the fact that one of the things I did, and I think it was conscious, but we may never know, I treated my children with respect like adults from a very young age. I was never goo goo gaga guy,
Yep.
and I never flinched when they fell down and got hurt. I said, "You okay? All right, get up." You know, I taught them how to swim by chucking them in the pool, you know? And so, I mean, this is caveman stuff, you know? Why are we
Yeah.
trying to reinvent the freaking wheel, you know?
Yeah.
But
It's
yeah,
funny because, like, go ahead. Sorry.
I
I didn't
was
mean
going
to
to
cut
say,
across.
no, I was going to say my dad was he's 96 and no medication, still driving his own car, going to church every day.
That's
So
awesome.
I got some good genes, and he was just a great father. He was a great model for a father, you know? And he really loves being a father. He was an airline pilot, but I don't think he ever missed a little league game. He was my coach, so he bid his flights around all of our events. And you know, he's got his little tiny flaws, but he's a saint. He's an exceptional father. So I was gifted that model, and so it was just I didn't know any other way, you know. But I think too many parents kiss their kids' asses and let them get away with shit. I don't get it.
Yeah, it's not the job. My youngest son, he was a hockey player. All my kids played hockey, but he was the one that took it most serious. And he was playing in a high school game and he got lit up. He was a good defenseman. He was rushing the puck up the ice. He got out over his edges and the kid lined him up and drilled him. I mean, it was a highlight reel hit. I mean, shoulder
Mm,
right in the chest, literally knocked him backwards, skates up in the air. And I saw the hit. And so I knew that he didn't get hit in the head or neck. I knew he got his bell rung, the wind knocked out of him. I knew it had to hurt like a son of a bitch. But everybody in the rink was like the rink went silent. It was that big of a hit. The game stopped. The trainers ran out on the ice.
hmm
And I was just kind of standing there. And they said, do you want to go over there? And I said, no. And they said, well, that's your son, right? And I said, yep. And they said, well, don't you want to make sure he's okay? I said, I know he's okay. I watched the hit. I saw what happened. He's an athlete. He'll be fine. So I let him get his wits. And then I went over to the bench once I could tell he was okay.
hmm
And I said, hey, how you feeling? He said, that hurt like hell. And I said, yeah, I bet it did. I said, are you going to play anymore? And he said, my coach told me I couldn't play the rest of the game. I said, did you ask to go back in? He said, yes. I said, good. Both you and your coach did the right thing. You should
hmm
want to go back in there, and your coach should not let you. Everybody did their
Yeah.
job here. Good
Yep.
job. I'm glad you're okay. Uh, that'll teach you to keep your head up while you're rushing the puck. You're lucky you learned the lesson that way instead of another way because it could have been a lot worse than it was. But good job. I'm proud of you for taking
Yeah.
it and getting back up and wanting to go back in. That's the whole point.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think we got to take the kid gloves off of people just in general, I think.
Yeah, life's going to kick you in the teeth. You said all of your kids are entrepreneurs. Are they in a similar line of work as you, or what do they do? What are they interested in?
So my son's kind of on the cusp. He's been trying to get a music business off the ground, and he's got other work that he does fully, but he's got his own little company. He's a producer of rap music,
Hmm,
and he's wrestling with the viability of that business model, and he was really kind of enjoying a steady paycheck. So I think he may have shifted his sights a little bit, but I don't want to put words in his mouth. He's a very talented musician, and
sure.
my eldest, she was a film major and dance minor, and she's a consultant for the Weather Channel. She does a lot of their video and video editing. And then she has a business where she helps people start podcasts. She does all the graphic design and the audio and video work. Very talented with audio and video. And then she also is a certified yoga instructor. So she has a few programs, and she's actually in Scotland right now. She took off to Ireland and Scotland on her own for 6 weeks to just find her roots, and God bless her. But she's very successful, very funny, very pretty, very athletic. And then my middle child, she's got the business the farthest off the ground. She's on stages now, and she's nationally known in the gut health world. She's a practitioner of gut health, not licensed, but extremely knowledgeable and well educated. Got a couple of registered dietitians on her staff, and she'll be bumping up on seven figures here in another 6 or 8 months.
Wow.
So
Good for her.
yeah, she's killing it. And I mean, dude, there's so many good stories there. The best one I'll just share real quick is she had a lady come to her. Mostly women seem to be attracted to her. Gut health is what she ended up with. She's like, everything. If you get your gut right, everything else is better. And that's just a medical fact. So she picked a good slot. But she had a lady come to her a couple months back and say, my husband and I have been trying to get pregnant for a year. We spent like $100,000 and nothing's worked. Can you help us? She said, I don't know, but I'm willing to try. And she gives a stool sample and some blood work, and she sends those off to the diagnostic center. And then they come back, and the registered dietitians do a diagnosis. And then it's just, what are you putting in? What do you got to stop putting in you? What new stuff should you be putting in there? And how much of it and when? And it's just balancing what you ingest is the quickest, easiest way to health. But it wasn't 2 or 3 weeks later, this woman came back to her with a positive pregnancy test.
Holy
So,
shit. That's awesome.
well, it's like I cried. I actually cried. I didn't
Mm,
like weep cry, but I teared up. I was like, you just completely changed their lives forever.
for sure.
Like that's God's work, you know? So she's really experiencing a lot of success. And they all are, but she in particular, but she's a worker, man. She works her ass off and stresses out a little bit too much about it, but she's getting ready to go to Mexico with her boyfriend for a little vacation. So yeah, I'm tight with all of them. They're great friends of mine now that they're adults. But it's funny, dude. I don't yours are not, maybe not. Yeah, they're old enough, I suppose, at least one or two of them. And when they start coming back to you and they start feeding you the same lines you fed them to teach you a lesson, you know, I get a kick out of that. Like, I've heard that before. That's what I told you when you were 7.
Yeah. Mine are 30, 27, and 25. So I get a healthy
Okay.
dose of my own
Okay.
medicine at this
Yeah.
point in my life. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Like, fuck, they were listening all those years. I guess they did absorb all this stuff.
My son said to me just the other day about that. He's like, Dad, I was in the back of that expedition when you were driving around talking on the phone for years and you didn't think I was listening. He goes, I heard everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I'll hear them in conversations, and like you, like we talked about, I've always been like a connector. So for whatever reason, people have always felt very comfortable talking to me, even though I'm not touchy feely. Like you wouldn't think I'd be the guy people come to with that stuff, but tons of people come to me with that stuff. And
People
now
like
I'll hear
candor,
my,
Joe. People like candor, you know? Good
yeah, I
people
think
like
that's
candor.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I always feel like it's like we talked about. I think it's because I'm genuine. I think it's because I'm non-judgmental. They know I'm not gonna endorse something like if you tell me, whatever, I'm beating my spouse, I'm not gonna say, cool for you, but I'm gonna say, hey, well, like what's driving that? Let's get to the bottom of this because I know you don't want to be there. So how do we fix it? Let's work through it.
Yeah,
Um,
it's what you're talking about is very much similar to what I do coaching. I mean, we're both seemingly interested in sharing our experience and wisdom with the world to those people who want to hear about it, to help them in some way get better. And I think while it's still in my mind, I would like, if I may, just to kind of people talk about like what am I going to be like when I come through your program, Mark? What's my life going to look like if I choose to pay you and hang out with you for a few weeks? And I've been thinking about that a lot lately, and it struck me. I had one of my best friends who I also hired when I started my company shortly after I started. I didn't know him before then, but he's become my best friend. and he's turned into a great leader. When we sold the company, he went off to work for somebody else, and he's just killing it. He's a wonderful man. He's a wonderful dad. He's a wonderful husband. Pretty good golfer, good athlete, and great sense of humor. And he called me up a couple months ago, and he said, "There's a friend of the family. The kid grew up next to us. He was friends with my daughters when they were in elementary school, and he's a good kid, and his dad's a judge. And he's at a crossroads. He's like 27, 28 years old. He's at a crossroads. And I wonder if you could talk to him." People ask me that all the time. I said, of course, I would do anything for my friend. And I said, well, without any additional context, what do you want me to do for him? And he said to me, I want you to do for him what you did for me 15 years ago. And I said, what did I do for you 15 years ago? He said, you gave me confidence. And I thought, I'm going to hang on to that one, because you know what happens? You're unclear and scared and shameful and regretful, and you don't know what to do. That's cloudy. I'll give you clarity. I'll answer all your questions, and I'll probably give you some pretty good advice that you can tactically execute pretty easily, pretty simply. None of this stuff's easy, but it's simple.
Yep.
And then as soon as you get clear, that confidence will start to come back, right? Because it's in there, right? Because you had it before when you won the state championship in high school or whatever.
Right.
And then what happens when you get your confidence back is you'll reach a certain level of confidence. Then you'll become courageous, right? And then you'll take that courage into risk, and you'll start to take risks you wouldn't have otherwise taken, which is how you make progress and real advancement. So it was actually this morning, I really crystal clear. If you give me your time and a little bit of your money and your attention, and you do the work, that's what I'll get you. I'll get you your confidence back. And then that's going to trigger leadership. It's going to trigger new opportunity. You're going to be doing things that you never thought you had the courage to do, because confidence breeds courage, and courage makes you fight through fear to get to the other side of wherever it is you want to go. And I really like that. I think that resonates with me.
I love that. And that's really well said. And it's funny because I talk about that with people a lot. So if you want X, you can make X whatever you want it to be. The way to get X is not to focus on X. The way to get X is to focus on the activities and habits and things you should do that will lead to X eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Because you need to become the person who can do X or who can achieve X or whatever the case may be. But you've got to take that constant pressure and longing and obsession about X off the table and fall in love with the work. And if you
Yeah.
fall in love with the work and just do the fucking work, it'll get you where you want to be. But that's where most people go wrong, is they want to skip steps. They want to get right to X. That isn't how life works. That's just not
No,
how
yeah, it's a great way to say it. And I say that in a similar way. I say that focus on the process, man, not the outcome. And there's different ways to think about that. There's visualization, there's prayer, there's meditation, but you're right. Because you're an athlete, you get this. Like I get this. It's like going to the gym. You
Yep.
know, you got to go to the gym every day or 4 days a week. You can't go one time and do 900 push-ups and expect your pecs to look good. You got to do, and all of the significant change that I've made in my life now, again, wisdom in hindsight, has been small incremental steps consistently over long periods of time. End of story. And there's no mystery to this, right? What I can do in my coaching is I can tell you what the steps are. I can't
Yep.
do them for you, but I can tell you what they are, right?
Yep.
It's like
I call
it's like I'm the life is the Mount Kilimanjaro, and I'm a Sherpa. I've been up there 100 times. I'll keep you from dying. We'll get you to the top safe, but you got to do the work on the way up.
Yep. I call it the compound interest of life because
Yeah.
it works exactly like compound interest.
Oh man, they got to teach that shit to high school kids, man. There's so much opportunity to teach our children way better than we're teaching them right now. My friend likes to say we teach them in socialism and then we chuck them into capitalism and wonder why they don't know what to do, you know?
Oh my gosh, isn't that the truth?
It's so cool. It's such a cool. When he first said it to me, I'm like, oh, I'm stealing that one too, man. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it.
Uh,
Man. So what yeah, one of the things, Mark, we do at the towards the end of the show is we kind of open the floor up. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you want to make sure you get out, or is there a subject we haven't talked about yet that you want to make sure our listeners hear? I kind of open it and give the floor to the guests. So floor is yours, my friend.
well, you know what would be really interesting is, and I don't have any context, but you do obviously, as your listeners, is if anybody listens to this and they have anything that particularly resonated with them, are people do people that listen to this still have access to a transcript as well,
A written
or
transcript?
yeah, or notes?
We do show notes for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know that we do a written transcript.
Well,
I
you
can't
know what? With
produce it.
with AI, everybody can get their own transcript anyway.
True.
So I would love to hear from people. You know, Mark, I nobody's going to like everything I said, but there's got to be some nuggets in there where if you could encourage your listeners, or perhaps I can right now, I would love the feedback on of the 15 things I said or whatever, 10 things I said, what resonated with you and why. That would be very interesting and very helpful. I don't know if that's too much to ask. I guess, like you say, you can always ask whether you get stuff or not,
Yeah,
but
right.
that would be very interesting to me because you've given me some good feedback, but we're somewhat like-minded and
For sure.
we already had a conversation. So we both had some level of expectation about where this might go. None of these people know me at all. So that's why I think their feedback might be really valuable. So it's just popped into my head when you asked.
No, for sure. Yeah. So, to our listeners, if there is something that Mark talked about that either piqued your interest or resonated really well with you, or you want to know more about, or you want to clarify, those are all good things. You can either send us a note, or you can leave it in the comments. You can go to Mark's website and get in touch with him, and we're going to have that in the show notes as well. So, there's lots of different ways to do that. But, yeah, I'm a huge fan of the interaction. Like, I always tell people that's how I got my wife to marry me. I asked her. Like, there's nothing wrong with asking questions, and people can tell you to kick rocks. That's fine. Most people won't tell you to kick rocks. People
Yeah.
they build it up in their head that there's going to be this huge rejection or it's some big thing. It's not a big thing. Just ask the question. Whatever
Yeah.
happens, happens. But most of the time, people want to help. People want to share. People want to talk about their experiences, and
Yeah.
they're usually pretty flattered that you're seeking their thoughts.
I find that to be the case as well. I find most people to be nice and cooperative, and I think the assholes are the fewer and farther between. But sometimes criticism, even if it's negative criticism, is helpful. The other thing that strikes me, Joe, is that, and you'll put this in the notes, but the probably there's two ways to connect with me before you spend money. And the only reason that one would do that is to either build more trust with familiarity or just understand a little bit more about who I am and how I think and how I view the world by reading some of my stuff, which there's a ton of stuff out there, and watching some of my videos. But getting on my calendar, I give people 30 minutes for free. And I don't know how much longer I'm going to do that, because I find that without any skin in the game, people are less committed and they just don't
Hmm.
show up at the same, I'll get a 50% show up rate with that. And it's getting a little frustrating. But for the time being, I'm giving away 30 minutes for free. And I think that most of your listeners that would take me up on that, a certain percentage of those will buy my stuff and want to invest more time with me, and a certain percentage won't, and that's fine. But everyone that I talk to will walk away with at least one or two pieces of advice that they can take action on, and a couple of free workbooks that, you know, everything I do, Joe, with the information that I give people, they could figure it out on their own. It's just going to take them a lot longer, and it's going to be a lot more frustrating. I could just get you there a lot faster with much more ease, and that's where the money comes in.
Yeah, well, I like the Sherpa analogy, right? So, could you make it to the top of Kilimanjaro or Everest on your own? Maybe. But is there a lot more risk doing it on your own? Fucking hey, there is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yep.
it's a good one. It's a good one because the risk is death.
Oh yes, exactly. Yeah, there's still I watched a couple for whatever reason. I watched a couple documentaries on Everest over the last couple of months. And there's a couple hundred bodies up on Everest because if you die up there, like it's really hard to get you off. So they just kind
Yeah.
of shove you to the side or try to give you a decent final resting place and leave you up there.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I heard.
the risk of doing that whole challenge is very real.
Yeah, there are some interesting things up there, refuse and such. Yes,
Mm.
I can only imagine. But yeah, no, I just can't thank you enough, Joe. It's just been it's just so pleasant to speak to someone who shoots straight without airs or judgment or and and I know we could disagree on stuff and still get along and I find myself talking a lot about disagreement and conversation because it's such an important part of communication. And I think that for us to make progress as a people, we have to be able to disagree and talk with people with whom we disagree. And there's a way to do that. If I were to leave people, because I think becoming a better communicator is one of the most important things you can do to become more valuable. And I've always fancied myself as a good communicator. I've always practiced it. I've always taken it seriously. We took vocabulary seriously growing up. We didn't watch a lot of TV, so on and so forth. But I think communicating, if you're going into a what you believe is going to be a disagreement with someone, my advice would be don't try to win.
Oh
Leave
God,
that
yes.
on the table. Don't try to win, and you'll have a much better conversation. You'll probably learn something. You may win, but that's like the process and outcome thing. Don't focus on that outcome because that's what fucks people up. People, I want to win. I want to beat this guy. I want to tell him who's boss. I want to be better. I don't leave that attitude at the door, and you'll become a much better communicator.
Couldn't agree more. I tell people don't listen to respond, listen to understand.
Mm-hmm.
That's the approach that's going to make you successful in conversations, going to make you a much better communicator. So yeah, hey Mark, loved having you on, and I wasn't bullshit. I wouldn't bullshit you. We'd love to have you back on at some point in the future, and so we'll reach back out at some point, and we will leave again links to Mark's coaching business, links to Mark's YouTube channel, and links to Mark's podcast in the show notes, so you can check those out. I did not check out your podcast, but now it's on my list because I have some windshield time every morning and I try to catch up on stuff I hear from guests or learn from guests on my
Do
windshield
you
time. So
do you have anyone in your family and friends circle who's on the spectrum, neurodivergent?
I do not, but it's funny you bring
Okay.
that up because we're recording one more episode tonight and it's with he's neurodivergent. He had a couple of other things that he called himself and like total polar opposite of us. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation because I'm going to learn a ton from this guy.
So the reason I bring it up is I think it's episode 16 of our current season 4, and it has the word neurodivergence in there. Jim was raised back in our day when no one knew what dyslexia was or
Mm.
dysgraphia was. So he tells a really touching story about being embarrassed in the 4th grade or 5th grade when the teacher made him get up and read in front of everybody, and everybody started laughing at him, and she started yelling at him. And then there was another episode when he was 18, or the community college teacher, because he wasn't, he pulled him aside and said, you can't come back to this class. And he's like, what are you talking about? And she said, I don't know if anybody's ever told you, but you're 18 years old and you have the 3rd grade reading level. So you can't even consume this content. And he said he went out into the parking lot and was didn't know what to do. He said, I'm fucked.
Sure.
I got
Yeah.
both of my best friends are on full scholarships to play baseball and football in college that I played football with, and they're going to probably have professional careers, and I can't even get into community college. What the fuck am I going to do? And he tells some really compelling stories, and I had a couple people call me and say, that's the best episode you guys have ever. I can't believe his story is just so compelling. So for what it's worth, I just thought I'd bring it up because every time I ask somebody, somebody knows somebody who's got this thing. And I honestly think that, with due respect to the guy you're going to talk to tonight, my older brother was ADHD before they ever knew what it was. They just couldn't keep him busy, you know?
Yeah.
And then he became a fighter pilot, a black belt in Taekwondo, and he's got a law degree and an MBA with 2 undergraduate degrees, and he just retired from FedEx, a multimillionaire. So there's your ADHD, you know?
Exactly, right? It's what you make of life. It's how you respond to what life does that determines your trajectory. And there's
Hey, you
example
know,
after
some
example.
some people do need help. Some people are in real trouble, and some people need medication, and some people need help. I'm not diminishing that at all, but we overprescribe everybody with everything, and I'm convinced that that's true.
Yep. So you said that was season 4, episode 16.
I think it's 16. Yeah, I don't have it in front of me, but just they're all. You can go Apple, you can go Spotify, or you can go to the website. It's whatever you prefer, but and you don't have to listen to that one. You might like the resonation of another title that's in there, and we just have fun, and we talk about things. To your point earlier, that to your dad group meeting thing is, guys don't talk about this stuff. I mean,
Yep.
even and you say you're not touchy feely, but yeah, but you're still capable of talking about things that are touchy feely. You just might talk about them a little more candidly or a little rougher, but it's the same shit, you know. So
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
yeah, men should feel comfortable talking about stuff with other men that aren't judging them. That doesn't mean we can't give you shit or crack a joke or call you a nasty name and laugh together. You are a sports guy. I mean,
That's how we show affection, man. I
that's
always tell
right.
people,
That's if I'm
yeah,
making fun of you, that means I love you.
I tell them that all the time. The nicer I am to you, the less I like you.
Hey, last thing, Joe, is some everybody sends me something different when I'm done. My ideal would actually have the downloadable file itself because I can cut that up into clips that I use on LinkedIn to market. And if you can't do it, you can't do it. I don't want to make it difficult, but that would be ideal. If so, when you do inform me that you've published it, if you can send me the actual file itself, it's probably a pretty big file. But or Google Drive somehow
Yeah.
make it accessible. Can you do that, or do you know?
Yes, we can, and we will.
Okay.
We're happy to do it. Yep. We're happy to
Okay.
do it. Yep.
Awesome. And then I'll get you the bio stuff and the pictures and stuff, and just confirm that the pictures are doable, workable. They're not professional photographs, but I got a really nice iPhone, so they should be fine. So, so
It works for us. There's no style points on Salty Ginger Talk. We're about being real.
if I had to bet money on that, I would have. All right, Joe. Hey, man, just a distinct pleasure. I really enjoyed the time, and thank you for having me. And I'd love it if you were to invite me back.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're coming back at some point. Really appreciate you coming on. Really enjoyed our conversation. And until next time, do your best. Be well.
You do the same, Joe. Thanks, man. See you.
All right. Thanks, Mark. See ya.
Bye.
Okay, guys. So, like we said in the intro, what a great conversation with Mark. What a great guy. Love how candid he is. Love what he was willing to share with us. Talked about his family and the challenges he had as a single father raising children. Talked about challenges growing and selling a business under duress. Talked about his coaching business and what he focuses on with his clients, what you can get from his coaching business, confidence, clarity, a roadmap to build the life that you want. So good stuff there. Really appreciate Mark coming on. So don't forget to head over to our website. James puts it up over here every day. saltygingertalk.com. All of our podcast episodes are available there. We've got links to all our social media accounts there. And we also publish a newsletter every weekday you can subscribe to on our website. So really appreciate you checking it out. Great content. We're going to continue to bring you great guests that have really interesting and helpful tips, comments, thoughts that we're going to share with you on the podcast. So make sure you don't miss it. And we'll see you on the next episode.